right, hello and welcome to Rasa Office Hours. I was going to say it's the first one of the year. It is not. We had Lauren on last.
Focused just on front end in the Atlas squad, which is our recently renamed squads, who are focusing pretty much exclusively on our enterprise offering. So for the last 6 months or so, I've been building our blueprints feature along with the rest of the team,
We've disconnected. Give me just a second, and hopefully we will reconnect. All right, all right. Reconnecting. ... Starting. Question mark. Reconnecting. Uh.
Is this a YouTube thing or a?
I think it might be my internet. Oh wait. Okay, I think we're good. I think we're back. Okay, everything looks good now. I think it should be good now? Question mark. We had this problem on the stream with Laura. I was dropping a lot of packets. It was the final rendered version was about half as fat, like half as shorter because we lost a lot of data. But I think we're good now. So thank you for the heads up, Amina. I'll keep an eye on it. So you're working on something called blueprints, which are going to be in Rasa Enterprise. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So blueprints is kind of the defining feature that separates Rasa X from Rasa Enterprise. Mm-hmm. It's a content management and kind of assistant design system intended for larger conversational teams to kind of plan and scale and communicate with each other while they're building their bots and their assistants. So it's split in two parts. We have a concept of flows, which are kind of business logic flows. So essentially a flow chart where you can plan the kind of business logic steps that your assistant might take. And then we have dialogues, which are kind of attached to flows, which is almost a mock conversation to communicate with other team members how the user might experience the flow through any particular assistant that they're talking to. So it's not a bot building tool. It's not intended to be a kind of drag and drop UI for making a bot or anything like that. It's an internal team communication tool to help larger conversational teams be more efficient when they're building their assistants.
We talked last week with Lauren about some of the people you might have on an enterprise team like that. So people like conversational designers or product managers, or I'm trying to think of other roles, subject matter experts who might be able to be like, oh, hey, this is a conversation we have all the time. Could we automate this, please? I'm tired of having the same conversation over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk a lot about conversation designers, which 6 months ago, if you told me that a conversation designer was a job role that existed somewhere, I would have had no idea what you were talking about. But they're really the core focus of what we're building. We're trying to make tools that make their lives easier while they're designing tools that make everyone else's lives easier. Yeah.
So in the, and Amina says we are good now, fabulous. In the time that you've been working on chatbots, because your background is not on chatbots, is that correct?
Yeah, not at all. I have used them like everyone else has. I've been frustrated by them, like most people have. But no, my background is absolutely not in any kind of conversational technology at all.
So I think that's actually really common for Rasa developers, that they're, experienced software developers who are coming to chatbots for the first time and sort of learning about them. So what have you learned about building chatbots since you've been working at Rasa? What are some tips you would give somebody who's just entering the space, trying to figure out what things are?
Oh, that's a great question. First off, I am far from an expert in building these things. I've built one. It was part of my kind of onboarding experience into the company, and I built a silly little bot that would take you through the process for brewing coffee in a variety of different coffee brewing systems. I think that, like most software, the most important thing is planning. These things are user interfaces at their core. Really, they're just not graphical user interfaces. They're a different way of interacting with a piece of software. If they're not well planned out, if they're not well thought out, they'll be hard to use, and the experience will be unpleasant for the user. So, I think planning in advance, really thinking about the problem you're trying to solve, trying to think about how people will feel while they're using the system that you're building. I think that's absolutely key.
Yeah, definitely. And I know a lot of our community, and also if anyone has questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. We're happy to answer them. We're just sort of chatting while we wait for that to happen. Something that I know that's pretty common with Rasa developers is working for like a contract, right? So someone will come in and will be like, hey, I really need a bot to do X. I actually have not been in this situation. I haven't been a contract bot developer or chatbot developer. But something that I have seen sort of talking with developers in that process is that oftentimes the people who want the chatbot won't have a very solid idea of the sort of conversations that they want that chatbot to have, which can be very challenging if you're trying to build it. So yeah, I'd say planning and working with your stakeholders, maybe the person you're contracting with, or the company you're contracting with, or, subject matter expert. So if you're trying to do a chatbot for customer support, the people who are currently doing customer support will probably have a pretty good idea what type of conversations are important, is really important. And, good conversations to have, right? We don't have a chatbot is not a problem. Go ahead.
Being able to clearly define the problem, I think, that's the starting point for any good software project. If you can't clearly define what the problem is, you're going to have a hard time building anything that automates that problem away. It's the same in desktop software, and conversational software is no different.
Absolutely. Do you have any particular tools or techniques you think are particularly helpful?
Asking questions, I think, like not being afraid to sound silly. It's everything within this industry. I feel like it's communication, and if we're not asking questions, we're not clarifying what it is we're building, and we have no hope of getting it right. So I think, I think being okay with just asking things, maybe looking silly, and getting the answers that you need. I think that's the most important one for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I also really like PRDs as just like a document format. I know that's like that's not a software tool, that's a type of document, but it's really helpful, which is a product requirements document. So what does it need to be able to do specifically? Like, have a conversation is great. There's lots of potential conversations you can have. What does that look like? Do we need like specific other code to be triggered at certain points in the conversation? What does that code do? Like if someone needs to, just for instance, be able to buy something through the chatbot, are you assuming they already have their credit card information associated with their account? Do they need to log into their account? Are they providing their credit card information? What's like the security flow there? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So many things to think about. And yeah, I think that the key word you used there was assuming, and it's the same here as everything else. If you're assuming anything, you're probably getting it wrong, or at least for some particular use case, you're getting it wrong. Any kind of assumption feels dangerous to me when it comes to building something. So trying to reduce assumptions is definitely important.
Absolutely. So I know you work on Rasa Enterprise, which is our enterprise offering, but also includes a lot of the functionality from Rasa X, which is closed source but free to use. So just if you had to pick one feature or tool that's part of Rasa X that you wish people just like knew about more, what would you highlight?
Oh, that's interesting. And I'll be honest, because I haven't been at the company that long, I haven't really explored using Rasa X to any great level. I know the little bit that I'm involved in, but I've not really found my way around and used it a lot. I think probably editing things in YAML is I like I'm not about to say I like YAML. I'm aware some people do, but it's. I think the just having a slightly intelligent system built around using YAML files, I think, is really helpful. I think it's nice just to be able to edit those things within the constraints of Rasa X, which should at least just help you along a little bit. It shouldn't let you go too far wrong. I think that's probably the way to go. Give YAML a chance.
I don't dislike YAML. I mean, it's a markup language. It ain't a markup language. It's a markup language. Yeah, I think if I had to pick one, I'm not a front end person. I am not a front end person. I'm not detail oriented enough. I know this about myself. Every time I try it, I'm like, yeah, it's close enough. Hi, Muzamakan. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Welcome to the stream. But something that I find really helpful in Rasa X is that there's a way to share with testers. So if you've got your Rasa X instance, you've got your chatbot connected from, say, GitHub repo, you can just send a link to people, assuming it's live and they are, within the network that you're hosting it in, and they can use your chatbot and start testing it, and you don't have to, customize a widget or anything, which I like. Again, it's something that I find very tiring and hard to do, and just not a great use of my time.
Anything that reduces the friction, getting something out into the hands of testers and getting people talking to your bot has to be a good thing. We talk a lot about the idea of conversation driven development. Getting a sort of minimum viable bot ready, getting it out to users' hands, and getting people talking to it and learning and training the bot further from how people really talk to it. And it comes back to those assumptions again. If you make assumptions about the way people talk to the bot, you're probably not going to get it right every time. So getting it out there, getting it tested early, getting people playing with it is a really helpful way to build and train and understand how your users really interact with the system.
Yeah, absolutely. People will surprise you continuously in just ways you cannot even begin to anticipate. Yeah, and I'm actually wondering. Oh, one sec. You can't see my screen. Is that working? There we go. Okay. The wonder that I have is about Sarah. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Sarah, not currently on the docs, but is a chatbot that we had on our docs for a while, and there were some maintenance issues. But anyway, I'm wondering if you can see the data in Sarah, because Sarah's open source, and I'm pretty sure you can. Let me see if I can pull it up really quick. Because a lot of folks have not necessarily, especially if you're coming to chatbots and, have a software engineering background. Let me pop up my screen. Ba-doop, there we go. And have a software engineering background, you may not have spent a lot of time working with language data. And I'm trying to remember if we have the data public, and I believe we do. And I'm also pretty sure when you opened Sarah, there was a little, we did this with consent. People who use Sarah had to agree to having their data shared. We told them it was an open source project. Oh, we've got a question from Paul, but yes, it is fabulous. I just wanted to double check that this was the case before I just said that you should go look it up. And the URL for this is github.com/rasahq/rasa-demo. Or you can just search Rasa Sarah, which is what I did. And we have in here user data. Also, I think this is probably an example of something that has been mislabeled. So WhatsApp is, of course, a platform, and it's been sorted into this bin for ask how you're doing. And I think that was probably actually not what that person was doing. But if you've never looked at language data before, I think this is a really good place to start and just sort of get an idea of, what sort of things people will say to just a chatbot that lives on the documentation of an open source project.
I'm guessing not many people would start with "ahoy matey" as an example of a greeting, but there it is in our real data.
Definitely. Out of scope, I think, is probably the one that has the most wild things in it. Oh, okay. So I saw people had a question and I don't see it anymore. So if you want to ask that, we're very happy to answer it. Yeah, so you can see this is Sarah's not currently 3.0. But yeah, so we have a lot of examples of people asking things in, other languages that the chatbot can't handle. And there's a specific intent that we're using to handle that. Yeah, lots of different languages.
I was actually just going to ask. That's something I'm not sure how we handle that and how that works. So yeah, it's cool seeing.
Yeah, great question. So if you're using character-based embeddings, particularly non-Latin languages will really cluster together in embedding space. So CJK, Chinese, Japanese, and Korean are pretty easy to detect without having to train a CJK detector at all. Languages that have a lot of overlap with your target language, particularly in in character substrings will be much harder to detect. So for example, if you have a bot that only does Dutch, you're probably going to get like some overlap with German, some overlap with English, and other really closely related languages. But yeah. And I think that Sarah just said something like, I'm sorry, I only speak English right now, when one of these was detected. All right, we got a question. How do we handle use cases where you need to give answers to a different variety of intents and give answers from knowledge base articles? Oh, good question. Knowledge base articles are comprised of different steps to solve the issues. Example, Article 1, Okta issue, Mac, step 1 through step 4, or Windows, step 1 through step 4. Okay, so this is about question answering where you have a hierarchical knowledge model that you're trying to draw from. The way that I would do this is I would probably, well, I don't know if you want to take this first, Paul. I'm going to take the obvious answer, and then if you have a non-obvious one, you can have it. I would probably use slot filling and a form. So if you have a limited number of types of questions, right? So you know that you are just doing support for something specific and that these are the specific set of slots you're going to need to query the knowledge base. I would use a form to collect the slots and then a custom action to run the query. We did something pretty similar on Stream a while ago, just like interacting with the database. So you structure queries from the gosh darn, I can't speak right now. You structure queries using the info generated by the slots and, your database schema. Yeah, so you definitely are going to want a custom action for that. Oh, additional clarification. It's virtually impossible to create an utterance intent entity response combination. Should we be using a knowledge graph or question answering? Yeah. So I would probably have a very general intent that's like query knowledge graph. And do most of this in a custom action. Now that I've taken the easy answer, what do you want to say, Paul?
I think you've answered it far better than I possibly could. Yeah, I would have said I think that sounds like a custom action, and I would have stopped there. Yeah, it's a really interesting use case, though. I'd love to know more about what's going on behind the scenes there. What sort of context this is being used in. But yeah, I think my own personal experience trying to build a super simple bot was that I fairly quickly found myself wanting custom actions for most things. I'm not sure if that's everyone's experience, but it certainly seemed like the way to go for anything beyond just very simple, here's a question, here's an answer. Yep. As soon as you wanted to do anything, even remotely custom, a custom action was the way to go.
Definitely. And it is not... It's experimental, but we do have a knowledge base action. I have not used this. I don't have a test knowledge base to set up, but this could also be a helpful thing to use. So can I zoom in and make this bigger? I can, fabulous. So here's an example of the way that this conversation would look to the user. Sorry, I'm having a really hard time scrolling so that it just shows up just right. So blue here is the user, gray here on the other side is the bot. The user says hello, the person says, hi, can I help you? The user says, can you list a couple restaurants in Berlin? So restaurants in Berlin would be used to fill slots to query the knowledge base. This I would probably have this as just like a general query intent. And then the, a query is run, the information is shared out. And then, anaphor, so fancy. What cuisine is the first one, which is representing this first restaurant. The cuisine of Donath is German. I'm probably saying that wrong. Sorry, I don't speak German. And then another query, and then another result, and then another query, etc. So that's sort of what it would look like. And let's see. Okay, so here's an example of the knowledge base, and I'm sure you could, it's very customizable. You can, rewrite things to fit your specific schema. Yeah. School Live says, "Hi Rachel, happy to see you again." Oh, I'm glad you're back again. And Abrar says, "Hello, hello, welcome, welcome." So yeah, I'm guessing that you also haven't used the knowledge base action.
I've not, but that looks. I mean, it maybe sounds terrible being an employee of Rasa and saying that looks really cool. I'm amazed by it, but I didn't know we could do that, and that's being able for it to be able to reference and understand what's going on inside that list is, that's some clever stuff. That's
yeah, referencing across conversational turns is one of those problems that a lot of work has been done on, and now I would say is fairly robust in, just general. It's something that we can do with conversational agents, which is fabulous. Victor says, dabbing emoji. Welcome to the stream. All right, and Nick says, any update regarding Rasa X being compatible with Rasa 3.x? Which date, months? Okay, I do not want to promise anything because, there's a lot of moving parts, dates might change. Know that we are working on it very, very actively. I would be surprised if it wasn't done by summer, and know that I am just picking a date that seems likely. Like, I'm not trying to lie to you. That's my big thing. I don't want to tell you a wrong date. So that's my crystal ball. We will keep you informed as soon as it goes live. You'll know about it, I promise. I know that's frustrating. And yeah, like we mentioned right at the beginning of the stream, Rasa X is closed source. So I know you can't see the GitHub issues and like how they're progressing, and that definitely is different from Rasa open source. Yeah. All right. Nick has another question. On the forum, developers are having issues regarding the new installation process for Rasa X 1.0. Any comment on that and why Docker was deprecated? So I believe Docker Compose specifically was deprecated. I don't think we've deprecated the ability to use Docker. Yes, I have definitely been also seeing those issues and bringing them up internally, shall we say. I've been trying really hard. I'm having a hard time finding the current state of the quick install script. I'm digging deeper. I'm really trying to find out as well. I know that it's an issue, know that it's being raised internally. Flags are being waved, pans are beaten, little bells are being rung. So I hope to have an answer for you very, very soon. And then that'll be on the forum as soon as we have it. Yeah, I feel the frustration there, and I wish I had a little bit more clarity to share with you. Yeah. Vpaul, who asked about the knowledge bases, has a little bit more information on the application that you asked about, Paul.
Cool.
Basically trying to create a bot for chat servicing a large enterprise. We do that. Solving issues related to peripherals and enterprise software. Okay, so like a IT help desk support thing. I've used the experimental feature with Kraken. I wanted to know how to convert thousands of knowledge articles to a graph. Is there an easy reference or a step-by-step tutorial on converting all these knowledge base articles to a graph? So that is a specific NLP task. I think it's called knowledge extraction, or maybe, one sec, I'm gonna Google real quick. Knowledge extraction NLP. So that's not something that Rasa's built specific software to deal with. Yes, I was right. It is knowledge extraction. That is, in fact, the thing that it is. Yeah, so you got a lot of options. The frustrating thing about it is you may need to do quite a bit of custom work for your specific knowledge base. There may not be a plug and play solution. If you're using, a very common type of knowledge base, there may be existing software that you can use, or maybe some sort of SaaS product possibly. It's not my very specific area of domain expertise. Do you happen to know anything off the top of your head that you'd recommend, Paul?
I'm afraid I don't. It's really not my area at all. No, I mean, I would hope that doing a bit of searching around the internet would come up with something. Um, but no, I'm afraid I'm not familiar with that area at all.
Hmm. I'm looking to see if there's anything, just like quick open source projects I can point you towards. None of these are are hand coded. This is just like a top GitHub stars that mention knowledge extraction somewhere in them. I'm just searching in another tab. That's all that I'm doing. So I'm looking down to the side. Yeah, but hopefully having the name of the task will be helpful, because sometimes that can unlock a lot of information and the ability to find more. Yeah. Yes. So not something that we do. We assume that your data is. I guess we don't actually, because custom actions can use anything, but this particular this one, the knowledge base action that we've written assumes a knowledge base that is already structured, so it's not just like flat text, and you'd have to do a little bit of work. You might be able to, I mean, all the work that I know about it off the top of my head is research work that I probably personally wouldn't put into production, wouldn't necessarily recommend it, not what it was intended for. Yeah, it's a great question though. And yeah, I think it's something that a lot of people want to do, and not something that we're trying to solve. Hopefully that answers your question. I know that probably feels not like super satisfying, but I hope it helps. Yeah, Amina says we started testing the bot. Congratulations! Amina's been working on a bot for a while, and I want to say it's also in 2 languages. I'm vaguely remembering. I definitely remember that you were working in French for sure. I've noticed that there are more than 3 policies, which I have in the config file, and the 5th new one is follow-up action, and there is a null. Do you have an idea on this policy, follow-up action? I'm searching in the docs. I just searched follow-up action. All right. The name of the follow-up action will be executed. No, I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to keep digging in the docs. Do you happen to, Paul?
I'm afraid not. No. Yeah. Again, not like the building bots side of what we do is really not my area. Mm-hmm. But congratulations on getting into testing. That's really cool.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially if it's been a long time coming. It's really exciting.
Okay, so having poked around in the docs a tiny bit, it looks like what this is doing is, I'm guessing this is probably related to the rule policy. So if the rule policy triggers, we don't run the full machine learning dialogue policy to try and figure out what to say next. I'm guessing. I'd have to dig into the code base a little bit more, and I see we've got some more questions, so I will save that for later if we've got a little bit of extra time. Yeah, we also have a lot of. You'll also notice, if you're looking through the logs really closely, there's a lot of actions that you didn't hard code that will show up in your conversation log. So like, you never have to say, and now the chatbot has to listen for the user. We just sort of automatically put those in. So I think follow-up action is one of those. Yeah. Yes, Nick says, on the forum, developers are not able to install Rasa X in local mode, and they're only able to install Rasa X 0.39.3, so Rasa X1 not having a local mode. I'm pretty sure it is, if it is not already, in the process of being deprecated. Let me pull up the documentations. Yes, so local mode is in the process of being deprecated and will be fully removed as of Rasa X 1.1. So it is currently deprecated, will be completely removed. I imagine that is why people are having issues. Yeah, so it is, it was in Rasa X 0 point X, whatever the specific subversions were. But yes, I think that's probably why they're having problems. Yeah. Do you have anything else to add on the local mode deprecation?
I only that I think 1.1 is not that far away, so it will be removed fairly soon. I'm not 100% certain when we're releasing 1.1, but I think within the next month or so. Yeah, if that's something that you're relying on, it's worth looking at alternatives and seeing if you can find a different way to use Rasa X.
And the sort of the thing we'd recommend in place of local mode would be some sort of virtualization, which would still be running locally, right? It doesn't have to be hosted in the cloud. Yep. All right. Question from Amina. Can we say for sure that once a button has been clicked, the confidence level of the intent related to the button is always 1? It sounds obvious, wanted to check. No, I can't say that for sure. My guess is that might be what's causing the follow-up action. Right, because it's not doing next action prediction. So I don't, like, if the, I'm going to back up and talk about all the things that I'm thinking in my head instead of just thinking them in my head and telling you the last step of the journey. So confidence is used for comparing the output of dialogue policies. If you do not need to compare the output of dialogue policies, you don't need the confidence. So if the follow-up action is triggered, which I'm assuming some of these things are guesswork, so things that I just said are not. This section is me trying to guess because I haven't dug that deep into it. So if the follow-up action is triggered, my guess is because we're bypassing the dialogue policy, it doesn't matter what the confidence is because that's just happening. So I don't know what the confidence would be set to in that situation because the point is moot, right? It's like not super important if that's what's happening. I feel 85% confident. I'm pretty confident. Yeah. I don't know if you've worked with buttons much, Paul.
I have not, but I mean, I think 85% from you is, I'd say that's pretty good. I think we're, you know what you're talking about.
I hope so. Sometimes I do. All right. And then by Paul says, thanks, Rachel and Paul. You're very welcome. I hope this helps. Last question on this. Since you guys are closer to NLP and conversational AI, I'm a little confused with the approach. Should I be doing it the knowledge graph way or the question answering way with haystack-like framework? Knowledge, I see your question, Anand. I'm putting that in the hopper. I see it though. Knowledge graph seems more complex as we need to model the data and create a custom ontology. ODQA will also require pre-processing, but not that complex. So I'm guessing that OD there is probably open domain question answering. I am not familiar with Haystack. And you said that was for question answering, right? Yes. From Deep Set. I think they're in Berlin as well. I think that's Deep Set. I'm just pulling up the Haystack docs right now just so I can learn a little bit more about them. Open source framework for building search systems, NLP for search, question answering, retrieval summarization, question answering. Open domain question answer. Okay, so that was open domain. Blah, 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 blah. Sorry, I am not making fun of their docs. I'm just trying to read quickly and also continue to say things so the audio hasn't cut out. It's sensitive to syntactic. Oh, is it parsing? I would be shocked if it was parsing. I think that just means that they're doing shallow parsing, if I had to guess. Savvy Art and Squad. Okay, so the big difference between question answering and knowledge base stuff is the difference between having structured and unstructured text. So in terms of picking an approach to use, you got benefits and drawbacks, right? So the benefits of the question answering is that the raw text is the input, which if if it would take a lot of work to make that raw text structured, could save you a lot of time. The downside of that is that usually sort of running queries on a graph is faster than running queries over raw text. So if latency is really important, like for voice, I would probably, invest in building a knowledge base from the from your underlying knowledge that you're trying to represent, as opposed to using question answering. Also, knowledge base and graph lookup will be a little bit more robust, right? You have more control over what you send to users, whereas with question answering, usually the way it works is that you extract something from the document and then summarize it. So you might do some sort of like extractive summarization would be the specific thing that people would talk about there. And that's going to be more stochastic. It's going to be more fuzzy, there will be more potential for something that is more surprising for users. So I would say if it's something like internal and it's documentation that's being updated consistently, and there isn't like also another, structured option that's also being updated consistently, and it would take a lot of time to build that structured option, and latency is not that important, and you're not going to have that many users, and also there's an easy way for them to escalate or be like, that doesn't seem right, and to get out of the chatbot if it's a problem. In that case, I think question answering would make sense. If you are doing, help desk support for an external consumer and latency was really important, and you had, let's say, a lot of queries, in that case, I think that, using a knowledge base and using the structured data and running queries on that would probably be the better choice, because it's going to be more predictable and probably faster. I haven't run haystack benchmarks or anything, but that's my intuition. And in general, extracting from on text is slower than extracting from databases. That was a really long answer. I hope that helped. I think they're both good approaches. It depends on your needs.
I feel like I'm learning loads here. This is all new to me as well. This is great.
Sometimes I get to brush off the old degree. All right, and then Anand, I saw your question. How do I add a custom fallback response for a particular intent? I would use a rule there. So the rule would be something like, in a situation where like whatever is triggering your fallback and also the previous intent was intent X, use this particular thing, and that way it'll be very reliable. That's what I do. I don't know if you do something different. Probably not.
I think that makes perfect sense. Yeah, sounds like a good approach.
Yeah. All right, and then another question from Amina. How to define the number of epochs for transformers and the threshold of fallback? How often should we change it since the NLU will be evolving? That is a great question. So I believe the epochs are defined in the TensorFlow settings file. Do I know where that is or what it's called off the top of my head? Nope. Not just at the moment. It'll be... No, it's in the source docs as well, but it would be in the docs that you'd... it would be in the file structure that you'd create when you generated your... you ran Rasa init and you generated your assistant. And there may be defaults, and you may need to create a new file to override them. This is sounding very familiar to me. I feel pretty good about this. Let me look in the docs. I'm assuming that's what Paul's doing as well. To the docs. I'll call this maybe fine-tuning TensorFlow. Fine-tuning validator objects, get model for fine-tuning. All right, optimizing CPU, parallelizing, set the environment variable. Okay, and I'm setting that in the tfconfig submodule is what you would need to change to fine-tune it. So that's where to find it is the answer to the first part of your question. And then the second part of the question was the threshold for the fallback, and I believe the threshold for the fallback policy is just in the domain. It's just something that you would set, and I think that there's a default of like, I said domain, I think it's in the config. Ignore the part where I said domain, I'm pretty sure it's in the config, and I think the default is something like 0.7. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure. When would you need to change them? So in general, the more data you have, the higher your epoch should be to make sure that you're not underfitting. But you'd sample as you were training. If you were going to mess with your epochs, right, you'd sample as you were training and look at the difference between your training data and your validation data. And what you would want to see is that they're both sort of like getting better and better and better. And once the training data starts to get much better, but the validation data starts to get worse, that's where you'd stop, sort of like classical statistical modeling method. So that's how you'd want to know when to stop. In general, the more data you have, the more epochs you want to train for, because the more information you're trying to capture in your parameters. And also the higher your confidence threshold can be, because your model has seen more examples and has learned these patterns better, hopefully. And again, that's sort of like a fuzzy, very high level guideline. But yeah. And I would say that you should look into it. Like if you notice like a sudden performance drop as you're going through and you're annotating your data, that's the point at which I'd really sit down and probably I'd first just retrain and see if that gets you any benefit. And if you're really, especially if you're working at a large scale, if you've got a lot of users, it makes sense to do a little bit of more machine learning engineering. That might make it worth the investment. Yeah. All right. Another question from Amina. When using the whitespace tokenizer, the word don't will be considered as one word, right? If I don't want it to be considered as, should I change the tokenizer or add more examples of do not? Whitespace tokenizer might also tokenize on punctuation. Do I know off the top of my head? To the docs.
If in doubt, check the docs. They
Absolutely.
I'm not even going to try and race you this time. You are far quicker hunting through these docs than I am.
Yeah, let me just look up the tokenizers. I want all of them. Whitespace is a separator. Token is created and will be substituted with a whitespace. Yes, okay, so it will be substituted with a whitespace. So don't will be dawn, t. And the only things that won't happen are for the underscore character, the #/ character, the @ character, and the ampersand character. And these are things you might see in like phone numbers or email addresses, which is why we don't split on those, or whoever built the tokenizer. I'm pretty sure we didn't build this tokenizer. Yeah, so you should be okay with don't. And even in a situation, if it didn't split, right, and don't was treated as one word, if you're using a character embedding, it should still be able to generalize, right? Because it's going to look at the sort of like the slices of the word and not just the tokens. So good question though. Bible says, it helped. Glad to hear it. Question 5. I mean, you always ask such great questions. It's great to have you on stream. Are there some drawbacks to using only rules or lots of rules and few stories? Do you have an opinion on this, Paul?
Not one that I would say is professionally grounded. I believe we generate stories from conversations with the bot. So I believe stories are the sort of conversation-driven approach to go down. I think, and Rachel can probably correct me on this, I think if you just went with rules, you would miss out on the chance to train against things you weren't expecting. So you could write down your own opinions, but you would miss out on if somebody used some different kind of phrasing or if somebody just asked something that you fully weren't expecting. Yeah, I'm hoping that Rachel's nodding is that's right.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, the benefit of stories is that you have that flexibility. That said, there are bots where you might only use rules, and these are going to be things that are extremely simple and extremely repetitive, and people are not going to deviate from. So a good example there might be if I have a chatbot that's just to like, let's say I've got some field technicians that are going out to do something. Let's say they're collecting frogs and they have like an earpiece in and they're just like reading frog information to some sort of database. And I ask, how big is the frog? Oh, it's 10 centimeters. How much does it weigh? 50 grams, right? If that conversation is always going to go the same way and it's extremely predictable and you have cooperative users, shall we say, who are familiar with how the system works, rules can work great there. And a lot of like very early chatbot systems only used rules because we didn't really have deep learning yet. If that's not the situation, only rules is going to get you into trouble. Because it can't handle unexpected input, you have to know ahead of time everything that users are going to want to do and in what order, and that's not usually the case. I can't predict that, and I've looked at a lot of language data. Yeah, so that's sort of the benefit and drawback. That said, some chatbots can be rule-based chatbots, and it's perfectly fine. But I think particularly for your problem, which it sounds like it's a pretty complex use case, I would not just use rules. I would use stores. Yeah. Oh, gotcha. I'm talking about the epochs that we can change in the config file. I don't want to mess with the TensorFlow settings for diet or TED policy. Okay, yeah, that's the exact same thing. As you add more data, you might want to bump up the epochs. It means it trains longer, right? So an epoch is just looking at all the data, and usually it's, chunked into batches. Also, people sometimes say epic. You might have heard about both epoch and epic. Yeah, good question. Seraph says, why skip me? Oh no, I didn't see your question. One sec, let me go back and see if I can find it. I don't see your question. It's not in the chat. Ask again? Sometimes if you include a link or something, YouTube won't show it. So apologies if that's what happened. But yeah, ask again. Anand says, can you please make a YouTube video of the process of Razabot integration with Google Assistant? We do have video tutorials available for Facebook or Telegram integrations. Yeah, that's a great question. We have, it's a little bit older. There is a blog post. From a couple of years ago now. Yeah, 2018. It's a little bit vintage. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. It's not Google Assistant, but I'm working on something kind of related right now that will be done when it's done. I have a hopeful due date, but also a lot to do right now. So teaser. Keep an eye on this space. Yeah. And I will add that to my community suggestions list that I have right here. Google Assistant.
I'm slightly intrigued now as well. I wouldn't have thought of integrating Rasa technology with the Google Assistant. Do you know what the use case is? Like what could you do with Rasa technology that you couldn't do with I'm assuming
like
a custom action skill within Google?
Great question. So I haven't used skills extensively, but folks that I've talked to, basically they just need additional functionality and flexibility. So you would be like, I'm not going to say a wake word, but hey, name of company that starts with T, launch frog measuring conversation. And if say that's something that you just, because the skills are developed like as a tool that like, I don't want to say anyone can use, like you still obviously need some technical knowledge, but it's fairly like, it's designed to be pretty easy to get started with. And there is, there's that trade-off, right? The more powerful the tool, the slower it is to get started with. And if you just need like a lot of really custom stuff, then it might make more sense to do it with Rasa. Or if if open source is important to you for your specific use case, you might want to use it for that. Yeah, but anything that you wanted to do with a voice interaction, you would use Rasa to handle the conversation, and then you'd have the voice component to do the speech to text, right? Because Rasa always assumes that you have text as input, and then a separate component to do the text to speech once you have the output in text. So that's sort of the general way that a Rasa voice integration would work. And we do have a library that's might need a little bit of TLC. That's I think Rasa voice integration on our GitHub. I might be looking into that right now. I might be playing around with it. Who knows? Could be potentially.
Exciting things to come. Cool.
Yes. Okay. So Seraph's question was got by the YouTube remover due to having links. So the question was how to serialize graph node for Dask on Ray. Do you know? I know some of those words.
That's way above my my understanding. I think I need more context. Even with more context, I'm not convinced I'll have an answer, but I'm now intrigued to know what the context is to this question.
This graph node. Graph node indexes data from blockchains such as Ethereum and serves it over GraphQL.
Okay.
I don't know. I would Google it, or search engine of choice. No. And Anand says, we do have a blog available for Google Assistant integration, but video tutorial is easier to work with. Please do a video tutorial on this. I will specifically say that it is a video. Yeah, also, unfortunately, I thought any of you who are working with Alexa, we had a blog post on an Alexa integration that was deprecated, like the method that we used was deprecated by the Alexa team. I haven't got it to work since, and I really did think that I'd added a deprecation warning to the blog post, and I didn't, but I did it this week, and I'm so sorry if you tried to follow that tutorial and it was broken. That's on me, my me. Okay. Questions from Amina. The question, ruler? I don't know. I'm trying to come up with like a fun phrase, but I'll work on it later when I've had more coffee. The button mode, to go from one button to another, we used fake intent. So it's intents. Oh, it's disappeared. Okay, I see. You asked again. Question 6. In the button mode, to go from one button to another, we used a fake intent. So it's intents that we defined in the domain, not in the NLU, just to do the links. Since we have similar cases, same intents and entities, nothing to differentiate between the two situations, but it's two different solutions. So we did, I hope it's clear to me. Okay, so what I'm getting here is that someone clicks on a button, it sends an intent, and that's an intent that you don't have any training data for, and it's changing the conversation. I think that is what you were asking about. Between two situations, two different solutions. Okay, so it's a way to split the conversation. I would probably use a slot that influences the conversation. There. Let me see if I can pull up the docs again. When do you use slots to influence conversations? Oh, it's loading. It's loading very slowly. I think I might be having internet issues again. Looks like the stream is so far so good. Yeah, so I would probably use a slot there. I don't think it sounds like the intent placeholder is working, but you can also use a custom action set slot that just sets the slot. You can also use a rule to do that, right? So, in this certain situation, this intent happens, set this slot, and then once that slot is set, you can use it to influence the conversation, which is what I'm trying to pull up now. And the URL for this is rasa.com/docs/rasa/writing-stories. And then the subsection is when to use slots to influence converse. And then it fades out, but I'm pretty sure it says conversations there at the end. Seraph says, basically to use Ray multi-node cluster. I don't know, dude. No idea.
Again, I'm intrigued, though.
We do have a forum, so for your Rasa questions, and I know Nick, who is here in the chat, is super active on the forum as well. So nice place to go for information if you've got it. You can do it. It's almost unloading. I really hope this is not an internet issue on my end, but it seems likely.
It's suspiciously slow, isn't it?
Your video is up,
fine.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we happened to catch it during a docs update. let me see if I can find it in another tab really quick. Meanwhile, while I'm doing that, I always like to ask people this, Paul. What is your favorite chatbot you've ever used?
Oh, that's a really tough question. I honestly don't think I have one. I've managed to not come across that many in my time, and none have stood out as being particularly amazing to me, I don't think. The one I'm most excited about, though, and I can't remember the person's name, but just after I joined the company, we had our conference, L3AI, I think it was called. And someone presented there about a game they were building using Rasa technology internally to make a kind of voice-driven game. So not necessarily a bot, but super excited to see how that's turning out. I think it was a kind of space adventure game where you played as one of the characters and had a kind of companion who was the bot, and you would sort of talk your way through the game, which sounded like just a use of the technology that I would never have considered. Really, really intrigued. Oh, this is something different, I think.
Oh, this is something different. Okay, I thought you were talking about the Unity project.
I don't think it was a Unity. I don't think it was a visual game. I think it was a pure
Text-based.
kind of like text adventure style game, but an audio thing. So you were speaking, and the game played audio at you. So I think their demo involved.
Oh, yeah. I vaguely remember this as well.
I remember there being a spaceport. There was a kind of future airport style thing. I'm sure the idea was you had to get to the moon for something. But yeah, just the idea that you could explore this world in a almost a kind of book reading fashion. So you were kind of imagining the UI or imagining the world without being told exactly what it looked like, and exploring by talking. It's just it's like a really different way of interacting with the game.
Right. I'm trying to remember. It's a little bit older, but like the super popular. I don't know about popular. I guess it was popular at the time. Like that super niche popular text game where you got eaten by Grooves.
Oh, I wish I could remember the name of that as well. But
I am in the Wikipedia article on text-based game. Maybe eaten by Gru. Zork.
There you go.
Yes. Zork. Yeah. It just reminded me of that. Thanks, Amina. I'll see you next week. Okay, so Seraph is asking a clarifying question. Oh, and I did find it loaded right away in another tab, so there might have been like a weird cookie in that tab or something. So I would use a slot to influence the conversation there. I think it's just gonna be easier for you. To rephrase, since Rasa uses a graph runner for training components now. Oh, okay, so this is about the graph architecture. Specifically, Dask graph runner, I would like to use multiple VMs on array cluster for training a model. Gotcha, so how to parallelize given the graph architecture? I do not know. That's a good forum question. Pop this up. Yeah, that's the URL for the forum. This is not a general invitation to everybody to always tag me in your forum questions, because that's not a guarantee that I will see them, but it is a guarantee I'll eventually get real annoyed. But specifically, Sarah, if you'd like to tag me in a forum question, I'll bother people until they see it. So yeah, good question. No idea. Vin says, hi, Rachel and Paul. What would be a good way of extracting location names? So that is the task of named entity recognition. So this is specifically, I'm guessing based on your question that what you are doing is given a given text, you're trying to identify the words in the text that are locations, and you do not have an existing list of what words are locations. And I think duckling does that. I think that's going to be your best bet. Let me pull this up really quickly. Duckling is underspecified. I'm getting a lot of pictures of ducks. Duckling. Sorry, I'm having a hard time pulling it up right now. All right, and I think the version at Facebook is the current one. I'm trying to remember who's maintaining Duckling currently. It is actively maintained. I want to say that the Facebook version is the current version. And I'm also pretty sure they do locations.
I think there was something at the top there that said 16 days ago, so that looks reasonably up to date.
Yeah. I could have sworn they did things like parts of addresses. There's definitely a Python library. Let me put it that way. There's definitely a Python library to do this. So it's a subtype of named entity recognition, NER, and it's specifically location based. And there are definitely libraries to do this, most of which will probably be built on just somebody wrote a whole lot of regexes, and they will be very performant. So that's what I'd recommend. And we are a little bit over time. Sarah says it's already on the forum. I would post a link, but it will be going to, yeah, tag me in a response to that. That's red, and I'll bother people. Yeah. See you on the forum, Sarah. And then one last question from Anand, if you've got time, Paul.
Absolutely. Yeah, no problem.
I know it's a little bit late for you. I want to do interruption handling between two forms where I use the same slot. In the case value slot is filled in the first form being used in the second form conversational flow. How to overcome this? So first of all, you're definitely going to want Rasa 3.0 if you haven't updated, because handling updates and slots it's much better in 3.0. Much, much, much better. And I'd probably do just like a rule to reset it during an interrupt. I believe the default value is null, so I just reset it to null and then it'll get filled. Nice, quick, easy one. Great. All right. I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining, Paul. Thank you, everybody, for your great questions. I hope this was helpful. Lots of really good NLP questions, which I'm sorry, it's probably not ideal for you, Paul, but I liked them. So
fascinating stuff. Really interesting to hear how people are using the technology. And yeah, for me, I've learned loads about what goes on inside this thing. So yeah, really good. Thank you.
And if you're using Rasa Enterprise, if you want to start, talk to our sales team. They're very easy to find. But if you're currently using Rasa Enterprise, keep an eye out for them good blueprints, which should be a fabulous new feature. Yeah. And I see some extra questions. If we don't have time to get to them again, hit us up on the forums. Thanks so much for joining, everybody. I hope you have a great week. I will be back on Friday for a live stream. I don't know what I'm doing yet. I might be working on this project that I'm working on. We'll see how much I get done this week. Yeah. So I'll see you on Friday for sure. What we're doing will be a surprise, and then back on next Wednesday for the next office hours with another wonderful person from Rasa. So thank you, Paul.